right, here we are, the first recording about the regenerative OS. We've had conversations about this and around this this is already, I think, our sixth conversation in this series. The other ones were really good. We didn't record them, kind of recorded them. We're in motion, but today let's record properly. So yeah, maybe let's start with, you can give us a high-level intro, Pavel, because the name regenerative, you started with regenerative economy OS. I've been playing with regenerative economy society OS, and I'm just shortening it to regenerative OS, but the idea came from you. Can you say a few words, like how it came to you, how long you've been working on it?
Yeah, so first of all, to me, it comes from our work with what we call University for the Earth, which is a learning organization, an emerging learning organization with mission to mainstream regenerative economy. And we were exploring various strategies to do it and realized that we can actually, if we want to promote a new way of being, a new economic model, one of the essential components will be the like the layer of software and perhaps various intelligent agents that will support people in this transition. So for me, Regenerative OS or Regen OS is a system that envelopes or underlies the collaboration of humans, individuals, and human organizations as they move into regenerative economy and society. So it has to be built on certain cultural patterns that encourage people, for example, the reciprocity in people, like recognizing the accountability for our consumption, our choices, and so on, and maybe also tracking what people contribute. So there are lots of components, and at the moment we have not developed anything yet. It's still an idea. But I believe that it should not be developed by a single organization. I think we need to create a space. So it sort of evolves from the conversation of creating a venture family that we had with you, Victor. That one of approaches is, can we create a curated group of companies and projects that work on in the same philosophy, aligning with each other, creating pieces of software, attracting investment together, especially if we have AI component of this software, that it can kind of ride on the wave of AI enthusiasm that investors have. So if we combine the idea of venture family as which I also had for quite a long time, did not implement it, but had it. If we bring that with the idea of working on something that will be impactful, something that will be transformational, why shouldn't we aim at the highest possibility, which is to create underlying operational system for the new economic and societal paradigm? So that's the vision, and of course, at the same time, we need to be very pragmatic. So I'd like that in the consequent conversations, maybe today, we don't only talk about the philosophy of this, but come to some idea of MVPs, something that will start building up elements of this. We need to have it as really, there has to be an open source component, but there has to be like maybe freemium on some model which will allow the whole ecosystem to grow. So we need to find a very business-oriented solution in my mind, which also bridges the current present reality with existing organizations, with existing customers, and the future emerging reality. And kind of, on one hand, this is scaffolding to help regenerative economy grow, but it's also something that can be used now improve the work of people in existing organizations, and also serve as a bridge. So they learn new cultural patterns, they learn new ways of thinking as they apply this software. So that's like, okay, the broad vision. But I think we need to get gradually much more concrete and find very specific projects that can become the seed of this work.
Cool. So connecting with that, that really connects with what I have been thinking about, and what I would add to what you said is that what I've been thinking about is, first of all, is to really add into the equation the big question and the provocation of how do we get to the first 1 billion users. I've been in the tech space really actively 35 years, but really all my life. And this 30 years watching all kinds of alternative software try and rise up and seeing pretty much none of it become mainstream viable, right? I mean, I guess you can argue that Linux being on every Android phone is a success, but it's not really. The part that's in people's hands is actually not the part that's open source and the open success. So that's my question that I want to include as we go to planning, is to work practically today, but towards the bigger provocation of how do we get to 1 billion users, which, connecting with what you said, it needs to have business sense, and it needs to have business sense which can scale and scale investment. So we need to, for the family, we need to see, whether 10 million or probably somewhere 5 to 10 million needs to be the first investment round, which across 5 to 10 companies is not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's significant money, and then the ability to raise the next fund and the next fund and the next fund. The whole thing with fundraising and growing is you need to be in a position where every round gets you in the position so that you can get to the next round and the next round. So that's something that I'm really interested in. Also, because what I think is important is not just open source, but more profoundly than that, open protocols. We have really struggled to create many or any fundamentally new protocols, right? Arguably, blockchain is a new protocol, but that's it. The communication is going all through proprietary channels now. Even email is suffering from enclosure of the comments, and it's becoming next to impossible to run an independent server. So we need open protocols that we can widely create and connect things. And then the other thing, and actually I would love to hear your reflection on this, because when we say regenerative economy, I don't think we can have a regenerative economy without a regenerative culture of collaboration. How we communicate, also the structures, and so on and so forth. So I wonder how you see that, because you framed it concretely as regenerative economy. How do you feel about calling it regenerative economy / society, or just regenerative OS?
I would like to add something before we go a bit deeper into the discussion. Ultimately, there is reasons why we do this, and this is not necessarily a anthropocentric project, but it definitely has to have human beings highly considered in the whole thing. So you touched on a part of it that is in my front radar, Victor, which is the communities and the regeneration of the communities. I would offer the idea of going deeper and the regeneration of the human being. We are in a process where lots of people are suffering for different reasons. And to me, this should have the value of bringing us to a level of existence that we aim for centuries or for thousands of years, and we may be at the cusp of getting there, but just not yet. Simplifying things, I see people that are surviving, I see people that are improving, and I see people that are enjoying. They are not mutually exclusive, but if we are talking about the first million users and you are talking about the bottom of the pyramid, they are mostly surviving. So the idea that I would like to bring here, and you mentioned when you exchanged some ideas before this conversation, you mentioned, Victor, when you talked about the economic domain. And to me, the economic domain has a connection with something that is absolutely crucial, that we keep an eye on, which is the value. What is the value that is coming out of this? So to me, it would be very relevant that we have a value awareness system that is omnipresent on what we will be doing. And it would be even nice if we could give it some thinking about what mainstreams of value are we interested in observing as we go along, both in the process of making it happen and in the process of designing it, because that will help me at least to understand if we are clear in the why to begin with, and if we are clear in the why as we go ahead.
If I can respond also, I agree on one hand. First of all, I agree that without transition to regenerative cultures, which is new protocols of communication, new relational protocols between people, we cannot achieve regenerative economy in the old protocols and in the old mindsets, in the old ways of perceiving the world. I suspect, Antonio, if we move to regenerative culture, it will either entail or imply the regeneration of human being. So at the same time, regeneration for me is not equal to complete healing, and I don't know whether complete healing is possible. I think it's more about bringing back things such as human dignity or bringing back opportunities for full fulfillment of human beings. And so it's not complete. We need to talk, of course, what it means to regenerate a human being. But yeah, in principle, I agree. I just think that as they say, devil is in details. So when we go narrow, and also the tool cannot be a magical wand that immediately changes the whole world. It will only do so much. There will be still a lot that needs to be done. So especially when we talk about MVP. So coherence, for example, is a beautiful product that you are building up. It addresses some issues, but it's not a magical wand to solve all the issues of collaboration, and you know it. So it's just one aspect of how you can improve gatherings between people to make them more productive. So any other software we're going to discuss will have those limitations as well. So perhaps we need to have this idealistic North Star, but the main question is maybe to identify key principles, which we can say sine qua non, which are absolutely necessary, and then see how they can be integrated and what it means to actually have a software that is regenerative. Have we experienced the software that is regenerative? Do we know the software that has those qualities and at the same time is viral? That's another interesting question, because if we think about now, read the whole list of software that reached 1 billion users, almost all of it extracts dopamine, human dopamine. They're hooking us on like these drives, urges, and push us in the places where we don't want to be frequently as users. But we kind of hook to these platforms and sacrifice a lot of things to be there. So we don't want that. That won't be regenerative from the start. Now, can we do it regeneratively? Can we achieve 1 billion users regeneratively? An open question to me. For example, so I think there's like plenty of questions around principles. What is sine qua non?
Yeah, that's why I think we need to, when talking about the OS, we need to talk about 3 layers. I just came up with this today. We can reorganize it a bit, but the technology, maybe it should be in the other thing, but the culture is at the basis, right? How we communicate, consciousness, purpose, what values we're building, supporting, right? What is meaning, what is meaningful, right? How we do meaning making. And the technology is just there to support this. Then there is structural things, right? Something that I really think, and I think it's part of your work also, is we need different and much richer structures of collaboration and of human association, right? This is something that I talk a fair bit about. We've gone to a poverty of human structures, right? We had guilds, we had families, extended families, tribes, church congregations, all of these other kinds of groups. And now we just have countries, companies we work for, and football teams, right? So we need to rebuild, and I'm not saying we need to go backwards, but we need to understand that we need professional structures of belonging. We need social, regional, global, all other different kinds of structures, as well as we move to a new ways of working, which is remote first, which is global, which is fractional and partial a lot of the time, everybody working on many projects. Basically, we're moving post the employment economy, right? It's been a 200 years something burst where we took the feudal structures of a serf belonging to a village and a lord, and we turned it into industrial structures of a worker belonging to a factory, effectively. And now we're moving to new ways of working, and we need new structures for that. And then only then comes technology. And I think technology, it's important to think about 2 layers. One is the protocols and the standards, and the other one is the actual applications. So applications sit on top of all of these 3 layers. They're there to manifest a particular culture and particular structures using particular protocols. So applications only come last. Any reflections on this kind of way of looking at it, Pavel, or how else, or would you slice it differently?
No, I think it's yeah, I like the idea of having like, okay, you call that culture, but maybe more explicitly talking about values and meanings, and then organizing patterns as like at the core, I think, because there's a lot we can add. I mean, I'm just thinking it doesn't have, it's fine if we keep it like this, but emphasize, because organizing patterns actually includes the rest. Like it's basically the structure. But it's also organizing relational patterns, I guess, that
Yes.
And then protocols and applications. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's at a rough level, but I think they do exist, and the culture and the structure. I mean, these are fundamentally in a human space, and then the technology reflects them. All right. So if we have this rough structure to begin with, I have here, you have a bunch of, yes, and then the other idea that I think I wanted to add, I didn't mention yet, is that for me, when I say regenerative OS, my dream is of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of applications and pieces of software that are all operating on the shared top part of the stack, shared culture, structure, and protocols and standards. So when I say 1 billion users, I don't mean Facebook style or McDonald's style, old school monopoly, but 1 billion users in the ecosystem of the regenerative OS. And they might be using completely different applications and not even know about the others, but it's on this stack of this culture, structure, and protocols and standards. So that's why I think it's a very different kind of scaling. And this is also, I don't know where it fits in here, what scaling means or spreading an idea is different in this paradigm, because it's not this industrial repeating and copying the same pattern, but a natural throwing the seed and letting the seed grow in its own way. It's still the same seed, but it grows in its own way based on location. Cool. So should we go through your notes, Pavel, or how would you like to go through it?
I don't know. I think we can start by saying what is there is a few questions which I proposed in the chat. The first one I think is about the need, the pain points. What pain points could Regen OS solve right now for real regenerative actor or community? So I'd like actually to start maybe with that. So if we imagine something which becomes a product, what are the stakeholders, the owners of this product?
Yeah, so for me, like I said, it's less a single product, or it's not a single product. It's more like a movement of building protocols, building the new regenerative economy, regenerative society, and creating the tools which support it. So there is already thousands, I'm sure, of tools being written, but in my experience, it's all small projects without interconnection, without funding, or without a significant funding. So I see pulling all of them together first so that we can see what's out there and where do we need to build new things, where supporting existing things is enough. So that's how I see it, as a movement of bringing resources, which means attention, money, ideas, to these tools for this regenerative economy, regenerative society.
Okay. I like the idea of federated approach. I also think that um, when we talk about OS, there has to be some backbone, like API, let's say. What is so? Imagine that we know first of all, it will be important to say, okay, what are the applications? What are the examples? Then the question would be, okay, what is the underlying API that connects them? So I feel like we need to build up, we focus on that layer and maybe together. So how to move towards the venture family thing? Imagine that we bring together several players that can give synergistic value to end users, including companies, businesses that can pay for their services, or maybe end users that are B2C in B2C model. So we bring these teams together, and we also identify how they can play together is as an interconnected. So what can be the connecting tissue? And that connecting tissue can actually be the protocols that sort of allow them to send data to each other and so on. I feel that architecture, potential architecture, especially sufficiently flexible architecture, is something that is really interesting to play with, and especially to play with potential members of the venture family. But that perhaps is a few steps away. But I'm imagining we can move in that direction. So how can we bring the right collection of teams to work with each other, create value, so that they all grow into this early Regen OS version. Is that what you also had in mind, Victor? Just to be clear.
I have many things in mind. I'm happy to go at it from whichever angle. So in terms of the basic technologies, I think so if we look at concrete examples, right? So in terms of applications, the ones that we are already in conversation with is Coherence app. There is HiveMind. I mean, I'm just gonna Symbiosis, but HiveMind I think is more active. Colaberry, these are the kinds of, these are our friendly things. There is, I started talking with Haifa. They're much more advanced in their DAO builder. So I think the way I imagine it is we need to work pragmatically from multiple directions. Developing open protocols and standards is very expensive and very hard. So starting with creating an open protocol and only then building upon it, like technologists love to, tends to end up getting bogged down in technicalities and not focusing enough on the market. So probably we're going to have to start with building the family from existing applications and then get enough funding so we can move into interoperability and build protocols, unless already we can get people. So for the fundamental protocols, like you said, we need digital identity. Reputation and trust is a key one, right? Who, because this is relational, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proves who, and creating trust pyramids is really, really key. And then I think inter-organization agreements is also really important.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm working on the Coherence app. Probably I will, hopefully there'll be a gathering app as well. You want to do a U4Earth app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Antonio has I don't know how we should order these. These already exist, and they are these are good friends. I've already talked to them. Haifa, we know they're interesting. These are theoretical. Antonio has for you and I concept. So, yes, and then there is also Planeteer and a bunch of other AI ones, right? Which is, I don't know what the protocol standards are, but somehow AI collective intelligence, we're going to need to very quickly move from building this to building this in an interoperable way, right? How does my company's AI collective intelligence talk to your company's collective intelligence? Ha ha ha. Or my personal AI talk to your AI.
Let me ask you one thing here. I totally see the value, and I'm absolutely for the different companies talking to each other's AIs. My doubt is if the people running those companies will see more that as a threat than as an opportunity. So imagine, for example, a consulting company. Imagine McKinsey with all the value that they have in the work that they've done before. How do you see that could be somehow talking to somebody else's AI, as that can be the core value of what they have, or one of the core values of what they have? Not values in the sense of values, but in the sense of valuable stuff. And the other question is, if we go, and we have talked about this, Victor, if we would aim to have some sort of a digital mentoring, coaching, applying this to the companies and as they develop their own culture and all of that, how do you see that we could make something that would be trustworthy enough by the companies, and still they would be willing to share? Because actually it's like putting themselves in underwear or even without clothes if they would be having their own AIs and the content that they would entail being able to talk to each other. How do you see that we could go about this, if you do?
Yeah, so this is exactly why we need to talk about the culture and the structure together with these tools, right? So what you talked about is, and we need to think about how to describe this, but this is something that, and we're having this conversation in multiple groups, right? It's moving value from, because right now a lot of value is put into possession, ownership of information, ideas, data, right? So yes, and if your value system is that possession of ideas, right, and tracking all of this is what the economy is based on, then you can't collaborate ecosystem, right? I think the internet abhors containing ideas, information, and data. So, but still, we're very good at pushing against the certain parts of technology, sometimes rightly, sometimes less likely so. But what I think is natural, and we need to shift to what's actually, I think, more human, is value is in action and relationships, not in ideas and information. This changes things, but I will propose to you that this idea of putting economic value into ideas or information. I'm an artist, so I produce a song and everybody has to pay me when they sing my song. This is modern. This is an industrial era thing, right? Before, ideas, they floated out, right? If you owned a book, okay, great. And the value was in who you knew. It's still in a lot of ways, really, the value in the world is on relationships and action, but we have this other thing. I don't know how this works with movies and things like this, but yeah, I'm sure Pavel has smarter things to say about it than me.
Yeah, I can say that there was a reason, for example, why the value of ideas, the values of songs became like why it came to be, basically. I don't want to repeat this evolution which led to it, but if for example, if you invest a lot of time in just becoming a good musician and you make a beautiful song out of it, it doesn't happen randomly. And then somebody just starts earning money by playing that song. It's fair that you receive at least something from that. So, I mean, there was an evolution. And of course, it's not the only aspect, I think, of where the private property system supports collaboration, I think, to a great extent, but also limits. So I think it's not that I think the regenerative economy arises not as a counter. So I think it needs to grow from within rather than to grow in parallel and try to overtake the existing system. Is how we create bridges on every level from an individual creator, for example, towards a large organization or a city to encourage new patterns. And who can be the like I said, it's also important when we start building all these elements to ask ourselves who does it create value for and why.
Yeah. The information, by the way, the music is a really interesting one to trace, because I think recorded music killed music. Before recorded music, everybody sang, and you just had to be an average musician to be able to have a job as a musician, because you went and you sang everywhere. Music now has a horrendously bad Gini coefficient, and most of the money gets sucked up to large corporations. So it's definitely not all good. I agree, we need to bridge from where we are. And continuing the answer to your question, Antonio, this is where I talk. So at what scale will people open up their ideas and their information data to collective intelligence? So I understand that within existing companies, they will only do this within the company. Though, note, there's already precedent for this, for companies sharing anonymized information between each other. There's actually an interesting case in retail for one kind of product in the US, because and it's a bunch of big companies, there's an intermediate company that takes everybody's data and anonymizes it, and then everybody price fixes, so it actually becomes a cartel. There's a big court case now, so it's very interesting. So within a company, it's possible that they will only do collective intelligence within the scope of their company, or maybe with their suppliers. If you look at Toyota, that's thousands of companies, right? And Toyota could easily demand that everybody that's part of the Toyota group submits to their collective intelligence. However, there is so they will get some benefit, right? Your AI collective intelligence benefit will be dependent at how big of a group you become part of, right? So the corporate world will only be able to extend their little privacy bubble a little bit, or it'll just be their company, and they will get a little bit of benefit. regenerative organizations, which will say we're part of the new culture, we want to be part of the ecosystem. As we grow, we'll have the benefit of being part of a collective intelligence ecosystem of millions of entities, eventually hundreds of millions. And it will have a much greater benefit, but it will be a benefit around new business models, new ways of working, because it will be the kinds of business models which benefit from being open in a mass collective intelligence systems, not the ones from being closed and hidden in the old economy. And that's how I see it.
Victor, I agree with what you said. Let me put it in my words, although I don't want to go in a path which takes us so far out of what's possible that it becomes impossible. Sometimes I feel that we seem to be trying to fix or to make fit in the new OS a world that is based in a logic that simply does not fit what needs to be created going forward. And I'm telling you what I mean by this. Let's imagine, or let's take the example of what we are talking about here, sharing information among companies. Yes, there are moments where it makes sense for the companies to join forces with their competitors to a certain level. It is always very bound. It is always within a boundary. And when it implicitly makes them part of the winning group. I don't know if it was with you yesterday, Victor, or if it was one of the things that you sent, but at a certain stage yesterday, I think I heard somebody saying, in a competitive world, an individual that is competitive may take over the remaining. But in a collaborative world, if we are talking about bringing ecosystems together, those who collaborate with each other, and I'm not able to put this in the right words as I've heard it, but here is my point. We have to make a very, very, very bold choice. Or maybe we don't, but possibly we have a very bold choice to make. Are we working with the OS for the current scarcity-based system globally, where when I give something, there has to be some value gotten back by me in a perceived way that it is fair? Or are we able to consider, and I will go with whichever direction you decide to go, but my conviction is the second. Are we working in a system where we have to enable two things? I can provide as much as I am able to provide. So I can make as many songs as I can make, provided that what I consider to be my individual interests are taken care without having to be a collective sharing all that we have system that we had in the past, and in some countries that created serious trouble. It's not a collectivistic perspective at all. It's an abundance perspective. The same way that AI is so much changing the ecosystem of content creation, we will come to a point where similar systems will create similar abundance of material content, not intangible, but material, meaning food, meaning whatever we use as humans in the material world. Are we willing to consider creating an OS that enables this type of supraorganism kind of existence, which is going to be to our grandchildren or to our great-grandchildren, but somebody is starting it already? Is this the opportunity that we are looking at? Or do we want to be more conservative and still work with what we perceive, that we can understand how it functions and give a smaller step going forward? what do you think that it's what our bet should be?
I mean, to me, it's clearly both, right? The future starts here, right now. And as Pavel said, I think we need to really look at dual use technologies. And I think of it as Trojan horse technologies that we get in there and they just naturally bring people to the kind of behaviors and culture that we believe that, you know, that we believe is the future that we want to create. So it's both. It's got to be enabling and initiating the possibilities for what comes next, but it's got to work with the reality that's here today. Building software for a fantasy society which doesn't exist, I've observed people to do for decades, and it makes no impact in the real world.
Yeah. If I can respond, I also agree with the idea of dual use technology. And I also think that I would really prefer to have, I don't know what will be the protocols that will be used in the society that you describe, Antonio, although like it would be my dream to, kind of move to that society. I'd like to find a bridge towards that society. I also realize that we collectively are really far away. We need to understand that users, there can be few users that will act differently. I mean, in the end, Wikipedia is there, for example. It's there. It's based on largely on gift economy, as I may say, where people give their free time, they contribute, they steward it collectively, and so on. It's one of beautiful examples of, I would call it pretty regenerative. It has its shortcomings as everything, but it's pretty regenerative. At the same time, I realized that when it comes to sharing of resources, we cannot expect that people will not face the free rider problem, for example, that there will not be tragedy of commons and all these things that are so common in the existing economy. There's a lot to solve before we move to the society of the future. So I'd like to see how we can take those steps, and maybe we can keep it as a North Star, but I feel that maybe it makes sense to meet people where they are also. As much as I'd like to see them truly, fully doing it differently. But for example, just maybe to conclude my rant, cooperatives are frequently there's one of protocols that I think regenerative economy is using. So people learning to live in cooperatives, especially around basic needs such as food and water, maybe one of tasks of this software and one of purposes would be to give a tool set to cooperatives so that they get stronger in providing basic human needs in cities of Europe, for example, to begin with, or cities of Europe and North America, where maybe paying customers are present. Maybe that's a starting point, maybe. And then they already are based on some level of reciprocity, on giving and receiving. You can add, additional gamified tools there to encourage more giving within a system of cooperative. So I think let's also think of potential key use cases or early consumers that can help build this up. Like I said, for whom are we creating the value primarily? Who is going to say, yes, I need it? I can give you some, I can pay I don't know, be your first customer or whatever.
Yeah. So, and there is, I think, this is where I come to structure, because exactly like Pavel said we need to reinvent and rejuvenate other structures of humans coming together other than the government and the corporation, or the government and the private company. And in this context, what I believe we need to do is create tools which enable people to creatively experiment with all kinds of new forms of association and coming together for collective action, for profit, not for profit, for whatever, right? But if we create the right tools, then a future which we cannot even imagine will come forth. So that's why, that's the way I see it, right? Is how this abundant future will actually function in practice. I don't think we can imagine, but we'll get it 50% right and 50% completely wrong, because that's how it always works. But if we create powerful tools, then people will come up with all kinds of beautiful things, right? So we want to create tools which enable people to experiment and play with new forms of association in such a way that, yeah, all kinds of things can emerge. So in terms of talking about practical tools, right? I mean, I can talk about the Coherence app. With the concept we're starting to develop quite clearly with 3 different customer profiles, etc., etc. I think, as you said, tools for building new kinds of organizations are absolutely critical, right? There is value, governance, and then something that, like, all of people always talk about governance. Nobody actually talks about getting stuff done. Just making decisions, right? Which is actually 0.5% of the workday. Sorry, you were going to say something, Pavel?
I'm thinking about something you were expressing earlier about the possibility to found an organization in a very lightweighted way and get it started. So kind of, I don't know what kind of software it has to be exactly, but is it protocols and so on? But if we imagine that within the space of like DAOs, you can start an organization that is you basically set up everything all in crypto, all in decentralized with a few clicks, and then you can begin operating in that world at least. Then perhaps at some point also set up a more regular organization if you're successful. But if we encourage people also to move into this space, so I'm imagining someone who runs the ledger, kind of setting up organizations and maybe combined with a bank, that's a needed tool for sure.
Yeah, so Haifa is that. There is Collaborate. There is colony.io. And that's just the ones I know off the top of my head. Haifa is the one that comes from the regenerative world. So we need to look at and see and understand of what they have, what they don't have, in order that we can see what else needs to be built. They're really cool. I just had a 2.5-hour meeting in person in Lisbon with the guy from there, Haifa.earth. So there is definitely, and then there is a whole bunch of DAO building stuff in the crypto world. So there is people working on this. The interesting question is, where and how does it connect with the regenerative culture structures that we're talking about? Certainly, I think there probably There is a little bit more work needed on the tools and a lot more work on the culture and the education, showing people how to use these structures to build organizations. Also, something that I don't know how well these tools work at is lightweight collaboration. Because actually, a lot of the tools, and DAOs especially, are like, we will do companies, but digital. So the mental model is of this big, heavy thing that you set up that runs forever and da da da. Whilst most human collaboration is really lightweight and also usually within an existing framework of trust, though with a building trust. I think Collaborate is really interesting. My friend Gustavo is working on it. They want to move into AI for team coaching and stuff. So that's also the really interesting part, is how do we bring in AI coaches, AI collective intelligence together with the governance and Web3 stuff. So yeah, there is some work done there already and some cool organizations that we want to bring in and play with, but I don't know what's missing.
What I feel is missing is the use cases for us. I mean, they are obviously doing great job, and they did, I think, a lot of customer research. I'm thinking more broadly. If we say 1 billion users eventually, what is this? What kind of use case we can imagine? What kind of needs are being served? And I think if we find something that 1 billion people would be willing to subscribe to, probably somebody is already working on building it up, I suspect. So who are the ones who are building it up, and in what philosophy? But that's the later question.
I was muted. I was talking and I was muted. So in terms of the customer segments, I think there is kind of two categories. There's the regenerative world or the green world, echo everything, and then there is the more mainstream world, right? So on the regenerative side, on the green side, I think for me, I am really interested in startups for everything: circular economy, waste, sustainability, fish, food, algae, everybody that's trying to start a startup that's ecologically minded, because they already are starting from a point of view of, I want to do better for the planet. So the one planet, one team kind of idea should be there somehow, or at least they're closer to it. And also we have a shared language, etc., etc. I would also put it on the green side is, and this is something, by the way, do you want to go to a refugee camp in Uganda in January, February? Yeah. Well, yeah.
Is that an invitation?
It's an invitation. So I connected with a really cool guy there that he runs an entrepreneurship project inside a big refugee camp in Uganda. He's a refugee.
What's his name?
It's the Unidos project. Poly something. I think maybe you mentioned you talked to him or not. I don't remember.
Is that Rufin? No, someone else.
Sorry?
Rufin? No.
No. Yeah. The project name is Unidos.
Unidos.
So anyways, we have an invitation, and I would love to do like a week-long retreat of tech for refugees, something, bringing together, do it there in the refugee camp, and hang out with him, spend time. But I think and this not displayed this place. I think this is a great group because the system is generally not working for them, which means they are really open to everything. There is just generally NPOs, NGOs, and all of these community groups, but they have no money. They are not great customers. Refugees, displaced peoples, you can get good philanthropic funding to support them. For the corporate side, certainly, and then yes, also in this here is the events, because I know this space a bit. Also, I think everything around events is really interesting because within the context of an event, people will try all kinds of crazy software behaviors, whatever. So it's a good testing ground to get people to try things, experiment with culture, with tools, etc. So, and event organizers are very much looking for the smart ones, but a good percentage of the event organizers are looking for newer and better ways to bring people into action, to make stuff happen, to get engagement before, to get engagement after, etc. So I'm getting to know this space, and I think it's interesting.
What about if we have something that somehow, so I was thinking about kids, and especially the kids that are being a result, it's a subgroup of the refugees, it's a subgroup of the displaced people. I don't know if it makes sense to think of them separately, but from there, my thoughts went to education. Is there anything that education is struggling? And you have the formal public education struggle, and you have the people that are maybe one step ahead with the paid education, private schools that also want to somehow catch up with what is going on in the world, with all this movement, with this AI, with this robotics, with this new world order in this sense. Would you consider this to be in the regenerative part, maybe a segment, or do you think it's too small to consider that, or would it be in the yellow part?
Well, I would say education. That's Pavel. Where is the money in education? Is it the classical one? Is it the green one? I think this one is on Pavel. I'm happy to say I don't have to be an expert on that. Pavel, are you there? You're muted and without video in case you know or not.
Hello?
Yes, welcome back. You're still without video. I don't know if that's intentional or not.
I'm here. I received the call, but that was only 30 seconds.
So the question, Antonio, do you want to ask your question again?
Yes, it's about the educational world. There is obviously a struggle in the formal education and in the public education, trying to catch up, not only with the new ways of educating, but also with the new contents. And maybe one step ahead is the private sector, which may be a bit more aware and more able to, from a money perspective, from open ways to experiment perspective, they may be one step ahead. But would you see this as a customer segment? And if yes, would it be in the green or would it be in the yellow? Or would you see a transversal thing that could be to kids? And we have kids that are really victims of serious unrest in some parts of the world. And we have the kids that are living in what we can call normal parts of the world without wars, without these kind of things. What would you say about education, about?
So first of all, I work with ed tech space for quite some time, for maybe more than 10 years now. I just, for example, attended a very large gathering of, not a large gathering, but a very small group of large-scale ed tech business gatherings for the Russian-speaking world, so like leading companies. I can see that there was one interesting case, which I think can be resonant with what we do, but it's not education for children. What they are doing as an educational project, they are teaching companies how to be more. So they kind of developed a methodology for building up and growing up and scaling up companies. It's a combination of consulting, working with founder, and so on, which is an educational program, a kind of mini MBA that you deliver online, but very personalized, AI supported, and helps founders grow their companies through this educational process where they learn how to do whatever. Like there's a number of things, but I feel like that, for example, can be an additional component of what we do if we talk about early uh, applications. When we talk about children education, it's really a different pattern to me. I mean, it can be there, um, but I don't know too many good examples of successful and fast-growing startups outside, unfortunately, outside of more traditional education that sort of, for example, helps children develop skills for schools, for instance, or help them prepare for exams. I was always hoping that there would be more of, for example, soft skill development or resilient building. There are projects like this, there are quite a few, but they are very niche. And I don't know too much about a proper large-scale projects at this stage that's successful to get manage to get some traction, uh, access to large number of learners with something that resembles regenerative culture at all, unfortunately. And I don't see them as the first line of customers. They can be there after a while, but not in the first line.
Okay, thank you.
But founders, it's close to startups actually. It's close to startups. Maybe when we talk about small medium enterprises, how can not just founders but existing businesses through learning and implementation of these protocols, uh, whatever, boost their productivity and so on.
Yeah, it's this small medium. It's such a huge thing to range to, but small businesses are interesting because on the one hand, they could all benefit from a lot of help. On the other hand, they're all short of money and short of time and mental emotional bandwidth.
Mhm.
So getting them to do more stuff when they're already overwhelmed and drowning between all of the government and everything is a challenge. But I added here, I think, non-eco startups, right? And I would say startups, let's put it like this, startups from, I will just be dirty about it, by not privileged men. I won't even say white, but outside of the usual system, right? Not privileged humans, right? So everybody that hasn't gone to the right school doesn't have a daddy that can invest 10 million like Bill Gates, right? People that are not coming from privileged groups, they are all much more open to new ways of doing things because the existing system is very much rigged to support people coming from privileged groups to succeed. But yeah, I mean, this is good thinking of, I think maybe just the general NPO, NGO world. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't had much experience with them. I know they're trying to do good, but I also know that they have a reputation for being horrible workplaces, horrible work environments, and just really old-fashioned and horrible in many ways.
Yes, worse than the worst on some places. There is this domination, this domination of this. There is this name, which I don't know if it's not a B Corp. It is not a B Corp, but this is organizations that try to maximize purpose with a self-independent way of funding themselves. It's a specific type of organization. I've heard of them years ago as for benefit, instead of saying what they are not, which is a not-for-profit. That is definition by what you do, what you are not. If you are a for benefit, you are something that wants to create something happening. That would be a possibility in the green, but maybe it's just too much of a micro segment in itself. So just occurred to me.
Yeah. But I agree, we need to explore this a bit more. I think we will iterate this as we have a sense of which are the organizations that go into the first family.
I feel like we still need to have maybe a little bit like, because you created customer groups, customer segments. But I'm quite curious about the need or pain that we, in terms of startup economy. I don't like the pain thing, but it's kind of like discomfort. Let's say, whatever we call it. What is the need that drives them to use this software? Uh, will drive them.
Uh,
Or I also like the jobs to be done framing. If you work with this approach, I really like it because it sort of says that the tool or the organization is hired to do a certain job, and that's why they create the value. So what we can also say, what is the job that the software does, or this operating system does?
so I've heard of the framework, but I've never hosted a workshop in it. So if you can walk us through it, we can do that. I mean, at a high level, this software creates our ability to create a regenerative society and economy. So it enables us to function in a way which is pro-social, pro-planet, and all of those things that regeneration is.
Who would hire this software to do this kind of work?
So then we're back to customer segments.
No, I think that actually when I listen to this, my suspicion is that the only stakeholder that genuinely can hire this kind of thing is not startup, is not event. It's more like a government. It's something like, or stewards of the territory. It can be a tribe that holds the territory.
Fundamentally, because we are distributing power, we are weakening the state. So what we are building, because it enables people to come and associate in new forms and work together in new ways, this weakens the state. Already we see the state is really struggling to deal with more and more people working outside of the standard employment system. Because the state is built on the mental model, people belong to companies, companies control people, we control companies, and thus we control the population, the economy, right? And suddenly you have all of these freelancers, people working part-time and all of this. In some countries, you still had a big thing. So I don't really see the state as being, also the state, I mean, a lot of what we're doing, collective intelligence across countries and all of this, it goes above and beyond the state. Maybe local, regional things, but like getting money out of the government and just working with the government, they're the status quo people. Arguably, it's their job is to preserve the status quo. So I think the key, who will use this is people for whom the existing system doesn't work. And by this, I see everybody that's working and trying to build companies and to do things outside or in a way that doesn't fit into the standard corporation system. So the creatives, freelancers, people working internationally, this growing group of people working independently in a way which is digital and online, right? Because, okay, if I'm a local woman selling beans at the market, I am physically based. I go to the market, I can take cash, the state can go fuck itself, right? But if I want to sell those beans, right, internationally now and EU-wide and get some people to help me and build an eco brand and I have to start a company and all of this, and it's maybe too much at the start. So that's why I see, and I love what you said, Pavel, of the startups being started by youth and stuff like this, right? I think every teenager should start a company because it's the perfect time to do it. Anything that happens is good for you. You succeed, great. You learn something, You fail, great. You're still living at home. You have nothing to lose, right? And you've got lots of experience to gain. They're not all going to go out and make a limited company for their teenage first business project. So that's on the one side. On the other side is AI is rolling out, and I believe organizations and people who are more open, whose model and whose ability to function is open, will greatly benefit by associating into larger and larger collective intelligence systems, networks, and they will need these more and more sophisticated tools for working together, right? I can give you an example, a concrete example, like coherence. We're getting a whole bunch of people together who are in this culture, or more or less, and we're getting them into conversations, and a lot of the conversations result in, wow, we could work on this together, or we should do this, or
Mm-hmm.
How do you create an agreement across organizations? You can send an email, great, woo, super high tech. So we need an infrastructure immediately coming out of coherence for people working together across organizations in a more flexible way. People will want to do projects, et cetera, and building a company is months or years down the road. So the way I think about it, right, I have this mental model of how human collaboration works, and it starts with a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it becomes a legal agreement, a company, an invoice, something structured. And past that, it mostly works. But the whole space in between that, right? We've had a nice conversation and we have signed a company agreement together, is empty. It's void. There is no tool or digital or technical support. There is nothing. It's a sucking vacuum of emptiness. Collaboration within a company, tools, tasks, project, within the context of a company, millions of amazing tools. Collaboration across entities, this whole space, and now with AI, it's going to become much richer. Because until now, it's been kind of humans, and okay, you have a CRM, you keep your sales process, you can stay on top of your emails, Dunbar number, But now suddenly with AI, there's an explosion, not just of connections, but of meaningful connections which could have real, possibility. So there is that. And then the other thing, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I'm thinking out loud. The other thing that's going to happen, what I've been talking about more and more technologically, is we're going to need a space where humans and AI agents can collaborate as peers.
Mhm.
right? So we need agreements that are written in such a way that the AI agent can accurately, without hallucinations, read it, understand it, and act on it. And this will require all of this digital stuff, right? Agreements written in digital forms, all of those things connected to the AI. So
Mhm.
as this new AI agents, and if we want to incorporate AI agents into our teams, into our organizations in a more meaningful way than just like your janitor or your window cleaner, do this, do that, but ones which really act as first, as peers in the collaboration, then we're going to need to organize our information, our collaborations in a much more structured way so that they can effectively operate on it and collaborate with us. And as that grows, I think what we're working on will connect with that and we can become part of that wave.
Uh, I like the idea of filling the void between first contact and the like richer work within companies and so on. I think it's a beautiful image. There is, of course, a reason why this has not happened uh, in my mind, because um, there are very high risks, and people actually are not fully prepared to, uh, maybe like I mean they see that unstructured tools like Google Docs are that are free are enough for people to explore facets of collaboration. So I'm wondering also, you are people ready to pay for functionality like this, for example? Because it sounds beautiful, but it's not entirely clear to me.
So that's where I think the AI will become a forcing hand. And it's just the same as internet in 1997. Oh, are people ready to put their business online? Well, some are,
Mm.
some aren't. And if the benefits are big enough, then through evolution of systems, the people who adopt it will outcompete the others.
Yeah.
So for me, the interesting question, I mean, people, there's a lot of people. Is there enough people? Is the benefit big enough? And is there enough people interested that they will move? And with Web3, clearly it was not the case. Also,
Hmm.
much of other usability and other things, it was just no. But with AI and AI agents, I think there's going to be a compelling move that will, yeah, the advantages are going to be, the advantage of having a DAO versus having an LTD hasn't been so great. In fact, if anything, it's been a downer because you can't get a bank account for a DAO. But when it comes to AI agents and having, for the cost of tens of euros or even hundreds of euros, have the equivalent of many people's workers collaborating, it will just become a necessity.
Hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like a agentic economy thing will be serving this.
Sorry, say it again.
It sounds to me that agent economy thing can serve this task.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a wave that's just people will not be able to avoid.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, when you have right now, a lot of stuff around culture in companies, it's just kind of like we assume, we do it every way everybody else does it, or a company is a place where the boss tells people what to do, and it's just how it is. And thinking explicitly and talking about culture is considered a luxury in most companies, and they don't afford it. But when it's a point click, right? And it's just assumed every team has a coach. Well, what style coach would you like? The asshole boss coach, the we're all here happy together and right? And then we'll just see that we're all happy here together. Team coach is the one that more people, more teams choose, and they're better at working together, right? Yeah, I mean, just imagine point and click choosing your team's culture. It will force people to think about what is actually the culture that we want.
Antonio, what do you think?
Would you like me to hear specifically about something?
Well, maybe your general thoughts on what can be the first use cases that will be working best for us in this, what kind of need we are fulfilling here.
Yes, I think that is a point where the three of us have a great level of convergence in the use cases in different ways, but all converging. Victor, very pragmatically looking at the different apps and seeing what is already there that may have agency itself. You talking about the use cases, talking about if we have use cases, we have something that we learn from and that we can show. And me, coming from an old school business technology, where I learned with one of my two previous bosses, where he said, a company starts with a purchasing order. If we substitute this with a venture starts with a use case, then this is where I see that we converge. And I know that it's maybe starting the house not by the roof, but maybe by one of the side walls. But if we could go back to the mirror that Victor put up, and we looked at what can be the potential users of this, then maybe from there we will make things happen. So we will see how could you, with U4Earth, make use of this? How could Coherence will be making use of this? How will For You and I be making use of this, Planeteer, etc. If you can enable some explorers, some early explorers with the minimum, and they can go out there and apply that to how they see it being fit, then I think that we can have a good first round of whatever, so that we look at the use cases, we learn from it, we showcase, and we move to the next step. It's the most pragmatic approach that I can see from what I can see, because bear in mind that when it comes to technology, I have a significant difficulty to keep up with your pace. When you talk about protocols, all I know about protocols, it is written with a P, an R, an O. That's what I know about protocols. I know nothing else. If you ask me what is a protocol, I have difficulty to contribute there. So my contribution is more in the sense of how can we make this happen in the existing world.
I realized I wasn't screen sharing for, I don't know when it stopped, but looking at the needs, the use cases, so based on what we said, is a space where AI agents and humans can collaborate as peers. That's one. The other one is, I believe, entrepreneurship is growing and current systems don't support it, don't support many. Clearly, companies work for many things, but my argument is that there's many more things that would happen and can happen given the right tooling. Third one is events are collective intelligence action activities, but we need the current formats of events were created hundreds of years ago. They do not connect with AI and our ability for collective action, right? There is a disjoint. And it's kind of funny because actually being more and more in the events and organizing workshops and experiences space, I'm far from any kind of a world standard, but I have a well above average mental vocabulary of patterns for how to bring people together. And the Web3 world, which is supposed to be so leading, is got the worst, most boring, conservative, old school events that you can imagine. So there is a gap between the event space and the digital collaboration, etc. space. I need to learn how to explain this more clearly. But I've talked to quite a few event organizers, and they're like, how do we get people to action? How do we do better? Because events, we come together with the intention of creating collective intelligence and moving to collective action of some sort as an ecosystem, some sort or another. And yeah, so those three things I have a lot of clarity on.
Victor, let me add one more. Very much linked to the one on the top right, and maybe it's inside of it, and if it's inside of it we don't need to explicit, but it's the feeling of the civil society needs to be able to act more effectively than it currently can. So the civil society could be enabled by whatever is done on the regenerative OS possibility. The society needs new tools in order to take concrete actions.
Can you?
And this really connects with what Mintzberg wrote. I don't know if I shared this with that, and this is already 15 years ago, but he is an old man and very wise, that society needs three legs: the government, the private companies, and the third leg is civil society. And actually, I think in the current system, we've gotten, and for me, I think civil society should be taking care of 80% of the society's needs, right? Which means the government should be 1/10 the size of what it is now. But we're far from that. But in any case, we need a much bigger civil society. And it's very interesting now. The US is experiencing that, right? They went to everything that's in the commons being funded by the government, and the government's change. And the new government has a new opinion of where money should go. And oops, universities and all of these programs falling left and right. So yeah, definitely.
But I feel that maybe we need to be a little bit more specific, because like civil society, in terms of use cases, what kind of actions we want to expect? Like what kind of...
Anything that could provide people some sort of agency on what they see that needs to be done at their level. Whatever would be enabling agency for things to be resolved, to be taken care, to be somehow taken in people's hands in an obviously balanced way. Anything that could be concretely done. It's one of the ideas that I am trying to get to, if I manage at all, with the 4U&I. Is to identify what is it that is needed to be done, and how can people come together so that they can take action with their own hands and make it happen. So any way that multitudes of organizations in this world are trying to solve problems at the local level can benefit from this. So you take, for example, what exists in the Fab City movements, in the Fab Labs, in the extension. So Fab Labs in poverty regions like India, for example, and like Africa, and sometimes also in South America, they somehow produce technology, produce ways of solving problems that they don't scale. I don't exactly know why. And they could be maybe made scalable with this type of support. I don't know. It's just something that came to my mind. Because the technology is there, the problems are there. How can it be scaled so that the problems are solved in a much wider way than the case that they happen to solve, but they don't go, they don't deflagrate.
Yeah, so maybe I feel like the specific type of users and needs that they are addressing are a kind of community centers or community hubs and so on. And it's basically organizers that can request people's enhanced collaboration.
Can be that. Or it can also be, if people see that there are now different ways that they can take action, then it will encourage itself the existence of action-taking units. So something maybe from the future that we don't know exactly what it is and how it could be, but that can really help mobilizing. In other words, I mean, if you have more cars, you get more roads. If you get more roads, you get more cars. So it's a self-fulfilling, mutually fulfilling dynamic. If you have the tools, then the groups of action may potentially come to exist in bigger quantities than what they have existed until now, because people don't feel a sense of agency. And if we increase the sense of agency by allowing these technologies to work, and again, we have the cases to show, then others will follow.
And I feel that also there is something around immediate value that is created. So, like if for example, people see that this collaboration leads to some effective change that will be effective in really maybe a matter of months, and that begins encouraging them so empowerment comes from results partially. So I think that is where we need that scaffolding element that I was envisaging in the OS. So it's not just a set of tools; it's also like a use scenarios that help people move from one stage to another and get things done in a way.
Yes, precisely that.
All right. So I like this. I think this is really powerful. We can continue working on it. By the way, I added the PDF of the book here. I'll share the thing because, yeah, I think this is really important to create a more balanced society. And he talks about it, public-private plural. So basically bringing back the commons in many forms.
I just had a conversation this morning on the launch of a School of Public Leadership in Kazakhstan, where I brought exactly this model of three sectors of society. And what I emphasized there is maybe that will be also useful for us here, is the need for what I can call translators. So people that are not just operating on behalf of one sector, but really can move between sectors and can see the need for each other in a way, like each other's resources, opportunities, find a way to support each other in their endeavors.
That is very interesting. When you are in Portugal, let's have a bit of a conversation about that. Not now, not here, but when we meet by the end of the month, let's see. I would like to hear a bit more about what happened, what did you say, what did you hear, and all of that.
Of course. But I feel like like with places with which I work, we discussed already, in that Central Asia can be an interesting playground for this reason, because it's a small scale. It's not as technologically sophisticated, but it has resources nevertheless. Some places, not everyone, but some places like Kazakhstan do.
And
And it's something where our assumptions can be challenged. I just want to highlight that, because whenever I talk to those people, I also realize that we have a very optimistic view of the world, about where the cultures stand and what the needs for the work we do and so on. So it's a kind of reality check. That's why I also sent this book on AI, state of AI in Africa. I feel like we need to constantly re-examine our assumptions, not based on what we see in our world, but what is there in the world of our potential users. Sorry, Victor, you were saying something.
yeah, so I agree with you. In places that have some resources or good resources and not too much technology, are good. What really is important is what's the level of entrepreneurship culture in general. And I don't mean startups and high tech. I mean, is there a bazaar culture, right? Because the bazaar is the core of entrepreneurship, or a craftsman culture, or somewhere like that, right? So, for example, I'd love to do some work in Morocco, because they have craftsmanship, they have bazaar, they understand business from thousands of years ago, but they're not digitally advanced. They don't know how to bring it into digital space, but they have the mindset. And that's actually good, because the people who already have a lot of technology have a lot of legacy, and they're stuck in whatever technologies they use. So it's much harder for them to shift. What's also really interesting for the kinds of things that we're talking about, how is the commons in that culture? Because some cultures are culturally very strongly collectivist. I mean, we usually think Asia, Europe, but it also varies a lot across different cultures. And if the culture has, and this is actually where I think religions can be helpful, because some religions are like, we're all one, we should all work together. And this means in business as well. So there is like finding ways to bridge from existing cultures into these things. And if we can, even if it's like dying out, but we can say in the traditional culture, there was always the village commons or and people contributed, then we can, rather than coming from space, we can connect with people's existing or historical traditions, and then it becomes less of a UFO future being shoved down your throat. But yeah. Cool. So I think that was the time we've had for today. I think it was a really good session, at least for me. I mean, we kind of went big and this and that, but it does feel like we have laid out a lot of things. I am really interested, speaking of concrete things, about the U4Earth app that you're thinking of. So I would love to, maybe next session we can do very concretely on the U4Earth app.
Yes, let's do that. I think I like it.
And then, because I think like we don't need any more big picture space future of humanity stuff at this stage. We need more concrete. And also happy to do a session on the coherence app and the other things. Yeah, cool. I'm good. I feel complete for today. That's my checkout. How about you?
Antonio?
I'm very happy too. Agree that the next steps should be, and so happy also with the overall and overriding perspectives that we've exchanged. But the key words to me are user cases. And so if we can move in that direction, this is where I believe that our time is going to be most valuable. So, yes.
Yeah, likewise, I feel that we did a really good work today to identify the first steps, how it can go ahead, what would be the potential architecture of this OS. I mean, we're still far away, but we started a good process. One thing I wanted to also discuss is I want to have this course on next 100 years based on my book, which is more like the vision of transition towards regenerative, peaceful, and just society. And maybe we can use that course also as a point of building up user requirements in a way. So it can be a lab. So maybe that's a side request. It's not directly related to Regen OS, but it's something that we can also explore as one of our next meetings.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we do something before you leave?